To discuss all, national political reporter for Real Clear Politics, Caitlin Huey-Burns joins me on set, along with CBS News Elections Director Anthony Salvanto. And we'll get to news of the day surrounding the medical records in just a moment. But let's begin with the polling out today, CBS News, New York Times. Of the many things, what stands out to you, Anthony?
That it's a tie, for one thing, in the four-way horse race, right? So you've got Clinton and Trump locked up. When you include Gary Johnson in the question.
Okay.
Right?
But
go ahead.
Okay. It is a four-way horse. Why are we bothering to discuss if this race was just two candidates? Because this race is not two candidates. It's never going to be two candidates. Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, barring some catastrophic occurrence, will be options in a little under 8 weeks. Yep. So can we just start talking about this realistically?
That's why I opened with
Thank you.
But see, here's the thing. Polls will do both because, especially in a national poll, which there is no national race, so all you're doing with it is setting a context, right? So it's a valid question of the two major party candidates, which one do you prefer? And we look at that, and that's Clinton +2. But you're absolutely correct. All these folks will be in all states anyway, for Gary Johnson, will be on the ballot. Mm-hmm. So when you test that, and that's where you look at it and you say, okay, that's a tie. And what you do find is that he does draw more or less equally from both candidates.
He does.
At this point. Yeah, a little bit more from Clinton, but it's not really statistically significant. He's drawing a little bit from both, and so you end up with a tie. And that's that's your headline. Context, tight race.
Then to synthesize what we're seeing here, perhaps politically, Caitlin, do these numbers suggest the race that we're seeing at this point?
Well, remember, this was taken in the context of Clinton had a bad weekend,
yeah.
Right? She had the questions about her health, questions about transparency and disclosure, the deplorables line, and all of that. So this is certainly, I think, unless I'd like to know your thoughts too, this is a reaction to that. And so we'll see how this changes. She's back on the trail today, campaigning more today, that sort of thing. I think, this is a sign. We know it's a close race. Both candidates are very much disliked. So we knew this race was going to be, I think, close. We've seen both of their leads from the conventions kind of flatline. The interesting moments in this poll, though, are the enthusiasm measures, yeah. And I think that's really important, and that's why we've seen President Obama out this week. Enthusiasm among Democrats isn't as high. She's not doing as well among young people as Obama was. He's really trying to encourage his coalition to come out and vote, turn out. Before the health incidents, her goal for this week was to talk more positively about the campaign. She's made it a lot about Donald Trump. This was the week that she was supposed to talk more about herself and kind of make that message and encourage people to come out.
Isn't enthusiasm, and aren't the polls really showing this, Anthony? Isn't that a part of the fabric of Donald Trump's ascendancy? That he is somebody whom his supporters, if nothing else, are rabid to see go into the office and knock the desk over and change it all. I mean, that's really essentially what he's promising. And with regard to the idea of the Obama coalition, that it's not just the demographic makeup of it, but it's really the numbers of those demographics that do have to show up.
Yep. Because, look, the poll watcher's guide to all of this is you're going to talk about likely voters as opposed to all voters. Mm-hmm. And pollsters are always arguing and trying to figure out who exactly is a likely voter. For the most part, it's what they tell you. If they say they're going to vote, they do. But that enthusiasm measure gets worked in there because who's going to really stand in line if they have to stand in line for 3 hours? Who's going to go out there in the rain on a cold November day? That's where enthusiasm works in. And so it does matter. It doesn't always matter. We didn't find high enthusiasm in 2012 for President Obama, and he still won. So there can still be a turnout machine going. But yeah, that's a big, big deal, and it's definitely a deficit that it looks like Clinton has to make up.
With two real celebrity candidates, then, for whom so much at this point is baked in the cake, and we're seeing numbers in the mid to high 90s in terms of supporters who've made up their minds, like, this is my candidate, basically, regardless of what happens. Doesn't it, Caitlin, make, boy, those three debates, and really, boy, that first debate, even more vital?
Absolutely, and early voting starts soon after that first debate. Clinton is certainly looking at that debate as a way to just set the rest of the tone for the campaign. She's back on the campaign trail, of course, but what really matters is preparing for that first debate for her. Donald Trump, seeing the two of them on stage will really will illustrate kind of what we're seeing in these polls. questions about temperament and judgment, questions about trustworthiness and honesty. Just seeing the two of them together in this moment, I think, will give voters a clearer picture of exactly what they're looking at, kind of personifies what we're seeing in these polls. And I think that's certainly a pivot point.
And Anthony, then we get to the topic du jour, the respective medical histories, and the underlying issue of transparency for both candidates. We often point in perhaps happier times to numbers like, who do you want to have a beer with? These numbers tell us a lot more perhaps than you think they might. How much are you seeing from a polling perspective? How much do these questions about the medical histories of both seem to be resonating with the electorate?
Yeah, these are little details, quite frankly, all these things that we talk about day to day. And the fact is, most people have lives and they don't necessarily pay attention to every little minutia that comes out of Washington back and forth. So what you do is this ladders up to larger issues, not larger medical issues, but larger issues of disclosure, of trust, and wherever candidates have deficits on those things. For Trump, it's temperament, it's commander-in-chief. For Clinton, it's been honest and trustworthy all throughout. Those are the big things over time that they each have to address.
I want to get you both out of here on this one then. Over the weekend, former Obama strategist David Plouffe tweeted this, and I quote, as it regards the Electoral College map, because we just ran that big long lap about what ifs, but then we always come back to the college. Trump's path to 270 electoral votes remains a basket full of improbabilities, if not impossibilities. Until that changes, it's all noise. Perhaps a subset question is, to your point, national polling gives us context, but shouldn't we really be talking about the 5 or 6 states really that will determine this entire election in the end? What do you guys make of what he had to say?
Yes, we should be paying attention to the key states.
Yeah.
We saw over last weekend Florida getting tighter in our own polling with the same reasons, that there was a little bit less enthusiasm among Clinton voters. So what happens nationally can become part of what's happening in the states. Sometimes you get demographic, what we call structural differences in the states. They can only win so many of this kind of voter that becomes part of something like a barrier in those states. But, you know, these big trends, you do start to see them trickle down a little bit. So we'll have to watch.
And I certainly think that Trump's path is much narrower than traditional Republicans. He's looking at a different kind of map, though. I mean, he's not really playing in states like Virginia or Colorado. Demographic changes have put that into Democrats' favor. He's competing in states like Ohio, Pennsylvania, trying to tap into his base of support in those states, which means that he's playing in a much narrower path. But that's the path that he has chosen. And to the enthusiasm point, his thought is if he can generate enough enthusiasm and support among the groups that he's doing well with, get them to turn out, that he believes that he might not need the other points. I think that is up for a lot of interpretation, of course. And if you just look at the map, it seems like Clinton has the advantage in terms of the states.
We tend to sometimes over-treat states like they're probabilities, like they're dice rolls. They're not dice rolls, they're people. They're millions of people thinking and making up their minds. So they're different, but they're not that different. And it's not like if you win one, you toss a coin, and then you do or don't win the next one. So there's a way to go.
It's also why for the next 8 weeks, we are going to learn a whole lot more about the geography of Pennsylvania. All right. Caitlin, Anthony, as always, really appreciate the insight.
Thanks, Ryan.